We're going to go to Mr. Reid, 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope you showed the same generous interpretation of the words 4 minutes that you showed of 7 minutes just a moment ago, actually many moments ago. I'm going to start by taking direct issue with something Mr. Lamoureux said because it is factually wrong. He asserts that Section 18 of the Fair Elections Act would prohibit Elections Canada from making contact with people to encourage them to get out and vote if they have disabilities. Well, it's clever wording, but the fact is that Section 18 does quite the opposite. It says, the Chief Electoral Officer may provide the public, both inside and outside of Canada, with information on the following topics only. Then it lists off A, B, C, D, E is relevant. The measures for assisting electors with a disability to access a polling station or advanced polling station or mark a ballot. It also says the Chief Electoral Officer shall ensure that any information provided under subsection 1, which is what I just read, is accessible to voters with disabilities or to electors with disabilities. It tells you how to become an elector and how to make sure your name is on the list of electors, something which is a matter that can be very difficult for someone with disabilities. And these are matters, Mr. Lamoureux, which Elections Canada has to a great degree been neglecting. I made a point of working very hard to convince the minister to put language like this into the legislation, and it seems to me now, in listening to testimony, that the problem is that this doesn't actually, it's not directive enough. It doesn't actually say, and he must do this. He must do this. It only says these are things he should do, and we try to focus him on doing these things, which he has been neglecting for years and years and years, despite the ongoing need. Having said all that, I actually have a question for Ms. Bergeron. I wanted to ask about the voter information card, which is, of course, the piece of mail that arrives telling you we think the person living in this house is you. So in my case, I get a card saying we think that the person living in this address is Scott Reid. Here's where you go to vote. And it gives you some other information as well. All of that is available, arrives in my mailbox in English and French, but obviously it doesn't come in Braille. And I don't know, is a Braille version put out for houses where the person living there is visually impaired? Is there some kind of effort that's being made to provide people with this kind of information in a form that is accessible and usable to them if they've got a visual impairment?
Braille version that comes out, and in fact, the voter card feels very much like a coupon that you get for pizza. So it often gets missed by people who are blind or partially sighted because it feels the same as every other piece of mail that comes through that is, you know, like it's no different than any coupon that comes through the door. So when we get those, we don't often notice them right away. Typically, someone who is blind or partially sighted will call the electoral office to find out where they have to go and vote, or ask a neighbor, and that's how we find out where we're supposed to go usually.
Would it be helpful? I'm not sure it would be. I'm actually just throwing this out. You'd know better than I would. If Elections Canada were to make an effort to keep track of people who are visually impaired, if they got, I don't know, an update to their database from the CNIB, and then tried to send out information in Braille to those people, or would that not be useful?
Again, not everybody who's blind or partially sighted is registered with CNIB, so our database wouldn't necessarily help you reach everybody that's blind or partially sighted in Canada. And putting out Braille, many people who are blind and partially sighted don't read Braille. So I think that...
Can I ask what percentage? Do you know what percentage of blind and partially sighted people read Braille versus not? Do you have any idea?
Last stats I have, do you remember? The last stats I remember is something very low. For someone who's proficient at Braille, is about 3%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But in saying that, there's a lot of people that I know that read what I call elevator Braille. They learn the basic numbers and so on, so they can tell the floors in the elevator, or just basic for phone numbers and so on, or the uncontracted Braille. But the people that do use Braille are very reliant on Braille. I carry a slate and stylus like you carry a pen and paper, and I use my Braille quite often, and I wouldn't consider myself very proficient. But if that card was sent in Braille, the first thing that we would notice is that it's a Braille card. And even if we don't read it, we would certainly pay attention to it. And but it wouldn't necessarily give the information that you're looking for. The other thing is Braille is large. It's really big. On a business card, you've only got 4 lines. So there would not be room on that card to put all the information that's in print in Braille.
Right. Thank you.
We'll stop there and go to Mr. Christopherson for 4 minutes or thereabouts, apparently.
I'm not going there, Chair. I don't have a lot of credibility when it comes to the clock. I'll just leave things. Thank you all very, very much for your presentation. Let me just lament how disappointed I am that we aren't having this kind of input at the beginning of the process rather than trying to ram an effect after the process. So I thought it was very interesting, Diane and Kory, both of you talked about vouching and the importance and ID, and your position from a practical, everyday living life point of view, you need to know is supported by virtually hundreds of academics in Canada and internationally who agree. Now, the government did manage to scare up one person. They scoured the planet and found one person who agrees with them that that vouching is fine to eliminate. And at the risk of wrongly paraphrasing their comments, they were basically arguing that in this digital age, it's almost impossible. He had trouble understanding how any Canadian could not have the ID required to go and vote. And as I say, all the other experts and yourselves point to a different reality, but I'd like to give you an opportunity just to expand a little to make it very clear in a real way how vouching is both helpful and conversely the damage it would do to the rights of many Canadians to vote if it was eliminated. If you would, please.
Absolutely. I think vouching is critical today, as it was critical last week. Look, at Canadians, you know, we've come a long way for Canadians to vote, and yet we're turning around and saying that they must come with ID. And there's no question that some people have ID, but I can tell you right now that when someone vouches, it gives them that self a hope. And whether that person is vouching or not, that person, you talk about secret ballots, that person also can be a neutral person as well in helping them. This act should not just be about ID, but it should be about saying that, you know what, you're entitled as a Canadian citizen to vote in democracy, but yet we are going to make some barriers for that to happen. That's not what we want to see. That's not what Canadians want to see. Canadians want to see a committed, all parties, governments, to turn around and say, we're not taking democracy away because now you have to come up with this ID. I can tell you right now, not everybody has a CNIB card. Not everybody has a membership card to their organization. Not everybody has a photo ID. I have photo ID, but I can tell you right now, a lot of our members don't have that ID. And if they turn around, so the question is this act about turning people away from voting in democracy, or is it about encouraging people? Having barriers does affect people's lives in each and every day. People with disabilities face enough challenges in Canada. They don't need a government, they do not need a party to determine the barriers, and they do not need to say, turn around and go, guess what, you're now not going to vote, but you already have challenges, so it's okay. There needs to be more of a leadway. The more experts that involved in this is people with disabilities, because they're the ones that can talk about the experience. I can talk about the experiences that what I've gone through growing up and the challenges. Many can. So I think it's shameful for the vouching, but I think it needs to be really looked at more seriously moving forward.
Thank you. Diane?
I don't have any specific statistics on what percentage of people with vision loss in Canada do or do not have identification. We are very pleased that the CNIB card can be used as identification. I can tell you that quite regularly I get calls from folks saying that they don't understand why they can't get on a plane with their CNIB card because it's got a picture ID, and ask me why we're not making our CNIB cards government issued ID. And of course the answer that CNIB is not government doesn't always get a good response. But the reality is that the CNIB card may be their only source of ID, and that might not be enough even to get a provincial identification card. They need other things. So I can't give you the percentage, and I can't tell you exactly how many people it will affect, but I can tell you that there are going to be some people affected.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Christopherson.